Can you tell people what you do for a living?
Здравствуйте, everyone. I do politics in the sense of practical politics. That is to say, whenever you see someone shilling on the internet, someone like me in the background has written those talking points. That's essentially what I do. That's what the political operatives do.
Going back to Tucker Carlson, his latest question is, what is the victory condition for Ukraine?
Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask the Ukrainian military command, is removing the entirety of the Russian military presence on the internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. So yes, that includes Crimea, which when they announced it first time in March, sounded rather untenable. But as the conflict dragged on and as things have changed quite dramatically on the field, it doesn't sound that untenable anymore. Especially now, since Volodya has essentially half admitted that he's not doing a great job. Volodya, that would be Vladimir Putin. He had essentially admitted by calling the so-called partial mobilization, he essentially admitted to his people that, look, the special operation isn't really going according to the plan, so we're going to try to fetch more troops. But, you know, all of those newly recruited men, what is their morale to fight? Well, that's kind of terrible, as we've seen in various videos, and even the Russian authorities admit that the morale is low. You have to feed them all, you have to clothe them all, and turns out to be a very complicated logistical challenge. So, you know, that's why the Ukrainians are so confident right now. Will that pan out in reality? I don't know. It's a war. In war, you can only plan so far, and then there be dragons.
You think they will go into Russia in order to gain a peace
They would be
negotiation?
stupid if they were to do that. Because the reason the morale of the Russian troops right now is low is precisely because of this argument that, look, nobody attacked us, Russia. Why the hell are we in another country? And as long as things stay that way, the morale of the Russian troops will keep being low, and the support of the Russian population for the war effort will continue to drop. If Ukrainians start seriously invading Russia proper, and I'm not talking here about Crimea, but I'm talking, I don't know, let's get into Belgorod, for instance, which is very close to Kharkiv, but on the Russian side of the border. I don't know. That could change things. That could make the Russian population be much more willing to support the war effort. It would also increase the morale, because it's a different morale on the field when you're defending rather than when you are the invader. So they would be stupid if they were to get into Russia proper. They should get into Crimea, of course, because it's an internationally recognized territory of theirs. But they should stop at the Kerch Bridge. So they shouldn't cross into Russia.
And what if the Russians don't want to go into peace negotiations and they're just sending troops more and more?
Again, there's a limit to that. There's a physical limit to that. And I suspect, considering that all attempts to take down the Putin regime have essentially failed, I suspect that's going to be the end of the war. You'll just drag on until the physical limit on the Russian side is reached. Where is that physical limit? We'll get to see. It turns out it's much closer than previously thought. I mean, the initial fears when the conflict started was precisely this. Yes, they are incompetent. Yes, they're behaving very stupidly on the field, so they're less strong, not as strong as previously thought. But they can mobilize enough people, and they do have a very serious backlog or stockpile of weaponry. Well, as the conflict dragged on, it turns out that they can run out of ammunition on the field. And as a result, it seems that the physical limit is much closer than initially projected. You have to remember that in this conflict, all sides of the conflict have been wrong at least once. Russians have been wrong on overestimating the capabilities of their military. Western intelligence has been wrong by underestimating the Ukrainians' ability to withstand the assault, the invasion, at least the initial phase. Various pundits have been wrong on various topics. For instance, I've been wrong on the topic of willingness. So, for instance, I was saying in 2020 that, look, the demographics of Russia are so terrible that if Putin has to do something, he'll have to do it by 2024. So I was right. He did it before 2024. But I was wrong on the timeline, because I said, look, realistically, if you want to invade Ukraine, you should do it after the month of April, preferably mid-May, after the mud season, because you would have to invade from the east, and between February and May, there's something called mud season, and you'll be stuck physically in mud with your tanks. And I presume that the Russian military command is rational about this and understands the conditions of the place they want to invade. I presume they studied before doing it, and as it turns out, I was wrong. They were stupid enough to invade in February, and that's how everyone has seen that footage of farmers stealing Russian tanks and all sorts of abandoned equipment. All of that happened because of miscalculation on the weather conditions on the field. So everyone was wrong with at least one topic. Now, of course, it's much more difficult for mainstream pundits who are wrong on more than one topic. Right? So, for instance, Tucker Carlson has insisted that there is no reason whatsoever for why Putin would invade. That was before the invasion. Well, that was seriously wrong. And like any other pundit who ends up having a big audience, of course, it's very difficult to come out and say, well, we were wrong. And that's why I'm saying always that saying I don't know and saying I was wrong is a virtue in itself, because it's so rare.